You know, loyalty's a good thing, right? It's always encouraging when you have a star player who's absolutely dedicated to their franchise. But you know, that loyalty a lot of times is sort of a double-edged sword. Because sure, it's securing their job, but a lot of times too, it's holding them back from achieving their true potential.
Excuse me, Dontrell Willis out of the backfield.
Tannehill to the end zone, it's Hilliard!
It used to be extremely rare to see a big-name quarterback swap teams, but it's since happened aplenty over these last few years. Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl in year one with their new teams, and let's not forget Peyton Manning claiming his second ring with the Denver Broncos 4 years after leaving the Indianapolis Colts. While many quarterbacks are in great position to win that elusive Super Bowl ring with their current team, there are several big-name guys that stand little chance of winning if they stay where they are. Here are 8 NFL quarterbacks who won't win a Super Bowl unless they find a new team. Dak Prescott. Whether Dallas Cowboys fans like it or not, this team simply is not going to win a Super Bowl with number 4 as their quarterback. That's more an indictment on owner Jerry Jones and his roster-building ways than Prescott, however. Jones just doesn't really get it. He has this thing where he holds on to coaches and players if he likes them, regardless of production. Remember, he's the same dude who forced 2-time Super Bowl champion Jimmy Johnson out the door, but happily kept Jason Garrett for 10 years because he was a nice guy. Jerry is just too selfish to actually give up the de facto GM roles. He overpaid Ezekiel Elliott big time and forced the team to move on from key players like Amari Cooper, Randy Gregory, and Connor Williams. Just horrible cap management from top to bottom. The Cowboys are simply never good enough to win it all. The lack of playoff success over the past quarter century speaks for itself, and because Jerry Jones is still the GM, and because he's fine with mediocrity, Prescott is never going to win a Super Bowl here. Good thing he only signed that contract extension for 4 years. Once it's up, he can take his talents elsewhere and win a Super Bowl in the back half of his career, a la Matthew Stafford with the Los Angeles Rams. Stafford was held back by an inept Detroit Lions franchise, but hey, look what happened once he left. The same thing can happen for Prescott if he gets out of Dallas once his contract is up. Justin Herbert. Los Angeles Chargers fans don't like hearing this, but it's the cold hard truth. This franchise will always find a way to screw things up. There's just something about the Chargers that makes it seem like they're always going to be snake-bitten. I mean, they didn't even make a Super Bowl with all-world players like Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, Vincent Jackson, Sean Merriman, and Lorenzo Neal on the roster. Statistically speaking, Herbert had one of the best 2-year stretches to begin a career for a quarterback ever. And yet, the Chargers didn't even make the postseason once. Also, head coach Brandon Staley is way too aggressive with his play calling and in-game management. All of that going for it on 4th down in your own territory is gonna start to catch up to you eventually. And why was Herbert finishing out a Week 3 2022 blowout loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars of all teams with fractured rib cartilage? The Chargers always have a star-studded roster, but never actually execute. Doesn't matter who the players and coaches are, it is just never meant to be for this team. And playing in a brutal AFC with top heavyweights like the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, and Cincinnati Bengals doesn't help LA's chances. Rivers was way too loyal to the Chargers, and it cost him the chance to win a Super Bowl. Once the Bolts waste more of Herbert's prime years, here's hoping he does the right thing and seeks a trade to a team that'll actually help him compete for a championship. Kyler Murray. It was surprising to see the Arizona Cardinals give Cliff Kingsbury such a lucrative contract extension in the 2022 offseason for a variety of reasons. For one, 0 playoff wins through 3 years is less than ideal. Secondly, the second half collapses of Kingsbury's teams dating back to his tenure at Texas Tech have been very well documented. Murray has all the tools to be a superstar, but it just feels like Kingsbury's questionable play calling is really holding back the 2018 Heisman Trophy winner. We've seen Arizona fall short in big games time and time again, yet Kingsbury always gets a pass. Arizona hasn't supplied Murray with a very good offensive line nor a championship-level defense. That's a problem when you share a division with the powerhouse Los Angeles Rams and San Francisco 49ers, along with a pretty well-managed Seattle Seahawks organization that should reemerge as a Super Bowl contender in the near future. The Cardinals are always good enough to compete for a playoff berth, but never a Super Bowl. And that whole Kyler Murray mandatory study clause fiasco? Yeesh, talk about not having any faith in your young phenom QB. Murray would do so much better with a well-run franchise that would make the most of his talents. We know he signed that lucrative $230.5 million extension in the 2022 offseason, but it's not too late for him to change his mind on that. If Arizona hasn't made the jump to Super Bowl contender by, say, 2025, Murray will hopefully get the message loud and clear that his best shot at a championship is outside the Copper State. Ryan Tannehill. And Tannehill enjoyed a nice career renaissance when he came to the Tennessee Titans in a trade back in 2019. We'll give him credit for helping to turn this team into a legit Super Bowl contender for a few seasons, but his marriage has simply run its course. Tannehill peaked with the Titans in 2019 and 2020, but his flaws were exposed during the team's heartbreaking divisional round playoff loss to the Cincinnati Bengals last season. And Tannehill is very limited as a passer. The Titans' pass blocking game is not what it used to be, and the former comeback player of the year is clearly struggling to make it work without A.J. Brown. Now, there aren't many better situations for Tannehill than Tennessee, but once the Titans took Malik Willis in the third round of the 2022 draft, it officially put Tannehill on the clock in the Music City. His time there is running out. And Tannehill could be a valuable piece to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, New Orleans Saints, or Carolina Panthers. Pretty much any team with a great defense and quality skill position players that's only being held back by their mediocre QB play. He hasn't ran out of opportunities to win a Super Bowl just yet, but Tannehill has just run out of chances to win it in Tennessee. And a divorce is simply the best idea for both sides, especially if the 2012 first-round pick wants to win a ring. Justin Fields. It already looks like the Chicago Bears were overly desperate and reached big time when they traded up to snag Ohio State signal-colored Justin Fields 11th overall in 2021. The Bears haven't had a true superstar QB since Sid Luckman, who played his final season way back in 1950. The last semi-good quarterback was Jim McMahon, who last played for Chicago in 1988. In other words, it has been a long time since Bears fans had a QB they could trust far more often than not. And based off of what we've seen from Fields so far, it's not looking like he'll end the Bears' long-time search for a quality starting quarterback. It's not entirely his fault, though. The Bears have had a terrible offensive line for years, and they've always struggled to put the right pieces around their quarterbacks. Sure, the running backs are always good, but who was the team's last legit star pass catcher? The Bears haven't found a way to properly install an offense around Fields' talents, and the team is just so far away from contending. They are miles behind their NFC North rivals, the Green Bay Packers. Heck, even the Detroit Lions are way ahead in their rebuild. It wouldn't be at all surprising to us if the Bears declined the fifth-year option on Fields' contract, and if the former Ohio State star sought the chance to start elsewhere. Fields, like Kyler Murray, could do so much better with a better run franchise. You know, maybe one that could actually build the offense around his skill set. Kirk Cousins. Cousins with the Minnesota Vikings is awfully similar to the Matt Stafford Lions or Matt Ryan Atlanta Falcons partnerships. With above-average QBs, those teams were good enough to win around 7 games and maybe sneak into the playoffs. But the rest of the roster just isn't good enough to help the QB go on a deep playoff run. And because the team is stuck in the mushy middle, they're unable to get the much-needed franchise-changing draft picks. Stafford went to the Rams in a deal that helped Detroit kick off their rebuild. The Falcons began a long-overdue scorched earth rebuild by dealing Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts in the 2022 offseason. Our guess, Tannehill or Cousins will be the next above-average, albeit inconsistent veteran QB to get traded. Cousins' stats since joining the Vikings in 2018 have been very solid, but his struggles against elite teams have held this team back for quite a while now. Of course, it's not entirely his fault. The O-line is leaky at best, and the defense has gotten worse every single year since his arrival. Many also took way too long to fire Mike Zimmer, a coach who had zero faith in Cousins. Well, new head coach Kevin O'Connell and GM Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah weren't here when Minnesota signed Cousins in 2018. They don't owe the polarizing quarterback any loyalty whatsoever. The new change in leadership is nice, but the Vikings still aren't constructed to go on a deep playoff run. At some point, the Vikings and Cousins will realize that they're stuck in the mud in that 7 to 10 win range with no realistic shot at a Super Bowl. Cousins needs to join a team with the top-level O-line and a championship-level defense to win a title. So, wouldn't a trade to the Steelers or Saints sort of make sense here? Zach Wilson. The New York Jets are building a nice foundation under the guidance of GM Joe Douglas and head coach Robert Saleh. But then again, this is a team that's always embroiled in dysfunction in one way or another. Wilson is supposed to be the guy in New York, but Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, and Sam Darnold were once viewed as the guys in Gotham too. And yeah, how'd that work out? The bottom line, the Jets always find a way to screw up the development of a young QB, regardless of their talent. Wilson has already been affected by injuries in his career, and the Jets have a long way to go in their rebuild. We still don't know how Wilson will be able to handle the pressure from the New York media over the long run. Too many athletes, fair or not, have absolutely crumbled in this demanding market. Also, just look at the state of the NFC East. The Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins will be long-term title contenders with young phenom QBs of their own, and the New England Patriots won't go away quietly as long as Bill Belichick is there. So yeah, once you add it all up, it's not at all a stretch to suggest that Wilson's best opportunity to win a championship will come once he escapes the Big Apple. Derek Carr. During the 2021 offseason, the Las Vegas Raiders quarterback stated that he'd likely choose to retire over playing for another franchise. Less than a year later, the Raiders handed Carr a lucrative 3-year contract extension worth $121.5 million. But it's really not too early to wonder if the Raiders and the 3-time Pro Bowler are having second thoughts now. Yeah, Carr had to be thrilled when the Raiders acquired his former college teammate and close friend Davante Adams in 2022, but this Vegas team is nowhere close to being a legitimate championship contender. The defense is an absolute mess as usual, and the offensive line is struggling to hold up. Vegas just has way too many holes, making it tough to survive in an absolutely stacked AFC West with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Russell Wilson. The Raiders aren't even a top 10 team in their own conference, and Carr is already on the wrong side of 30. So it's not exactly like time is on their side at this point. It just doesn't make any sense for Carr to finish his career on a mediocre team. At some point, he has to be like Stafford and have the desire to play out his remaining years on a real contender. We're not saying Carr will definitely leave Vegas. We're merely stating that he won't win a Lombardi trophy unless he does. But which other NFL quarterbacks won't win a Super Bowl unless they change teams? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.